Welcome to my channel. If you've enjoyed watching one or two of our videos and haven't subscribed yet, click that subscribe button now for more captivating stories like this. Don't miss a single story. The story begins in a busy office where a man is seated at his desk, engaged in a phone conversation. He informs the person on the other end that their company has received a request and assures them that the results will be sent within 3 days. After concluding the call, he sets the phone down, leans back in his chair, and lets out a relaxed sigh. This man is employed in the advertising department of a well-known company called Manhwa. Every day, he finds himself caught in the monotonous routine of home and work, with an increasingly uncertain future. At that moment, a bespectacled, overweight man approaches him. He addresses the man as Chen Su and informs him about the recent instability in the market and the company's plans to downsize its workforce. He advises Chen Su to give his best effort if he wants to retain his job. This news stirs some excitement in Chen Su, causing him to contemplate the possibility of job cuts. The overweight man hands him a folder and instructs him to inform him immediately when potential clients arrive the next day. This man, known as Lao Wan, is the head of the advertising department and has a habit of delegating work at the last minute. Chen Su, who has been working tirelessly for 2 years without a pay raise despite an increasing workload, begins typing on his computer in silence. Suddenly, something strange occurs, causing him to exclaim in surprise. His colleague turns to him and inquires about his actions. Chen Su gazes at the computer screen, closes his eyes halfway, and casually informs his colleague that everything is fine and that he just has tired eyes. Sympathetically, his colleague advises him not to overexert himself and suggests taking a break. Leaning back in his chair, Chen Su mentions that Director Wang has invited everyone to dinner that evening. He asks his colleague if he plans to attend, remarking on how the director seemed to enjoy organizing such dinner gatherings. He also realized that he had sent money back home the previous week and now had very little left for himself. In surprise, his colleague asked if he didn't want to join the dinner. He questioned if he had run out of money and suggested that he still had 20,000 saved up and could lend it to him. Chen Su referred to his colleague as little brother Tang and declined the offer, stating that he simply didn't enjoy crowded places. He reflected on how they couldn't even manage their free time properly anymore and wondered when it would all end. His coworker insisted that this time he would attend the dinner, indicating that it was time for him to leave. However, he suddenly interrupted and informed Chen Su that she was coming. Both of them turned their heads in the same direction to see an incredibly beautiful girl walking towards them. Chen Su speculated that she must be a director just because of her beauty. His colleague informed him that her name was Lu Xian and mentioned that she had quickly climbed the ranks thanks to her connections. Chen Su wondered if he could ever be with someone like her. In the restaurant, a group of employees sat together at a lavish table with Chen Su. They enjoyed their meal and drinks. Suddenly, Chen Su's eyes flickered with a barely noticeable spark, which went unnoticed by others. Inside his mind, he heard a monotone voice stating the successful implantation in the iris, successful connection to the optic nerve, successful connection to the cerebral cortex, and communication with the central nervous system. Chen Su stared ahead in silence, taken aback by surprise. He pondered if he was the only one who could see it. He saw the image of a robotic hologram, which he found to be a peculiar interface. The program informed him that only he could see it and introduced itself as Simi, committed to providing a better user experience and innovating for different age groups through virtual reality (VR). This program had the ability to read all of his emotions, including thoughts, allowing them to communicate without fear of being overheard. Mentally, Chen Su questioned why he was chosen when he had never purchased their VR product. He asked the program if there was a possibility of mistaken identity. In response, the program informed him that their tests indicated he was the most suitable candidate to be a dream tester. Curiosity piqued, he inquired about the role of a dream tester. The program explained that he would help test the company's new project, allowing him to experience being the person he had always desired to be. It was essentially a VR game with augmented reality elements. Calmly, Chen Su reasoned in his mind that he had work the next day and didn't have the time to engage in this. He requested to exit the program. The program asked him if he was certain, emphasizing that this system would grant him the ability to become anything he desired and have full control. It posed the question once more, asking if he didn't yearn to be someone different and completely change his current position. Chen Su then noticed his supervisor, Lao Wan, and director Lu Xian approaching their table. Lao Wan began introducing everyone to the new director, Lu Xian, mentioning that they might have already seen her. He instructed them to greet her. Immediately, thoughts turned to director Lu. Lao Wan approached one of the employees and introduced Miss Lu Xian as the head of the advertising department and a capable employee. Director Lu Xian politely greeted him, extending her hand and suggesting they work together. Chen Su contemplated how this person had advanced solely due to their ability to flatter. He recalled the instance when supervisor Lao Wan commended him for his excellent work on a project, and he had gratefully attributed it to Lao Wan's clear vision and wise decision-making. Now, feeling somewhat embarrassed, he shook the girl's hand and credited it all to having a great leader like Mr. Wang, expressing how fortunate they were to have such a leader. Lao Wan chuckled with satisfaction and proceeded to introduce Miss Lu to the next person. He mentioned that the next individual was responsible for copywriting and extended greetings to director Lu Xian. Director Lu Xian had already reached out her hand towards Chen Su and inquired about his identity. Chen Su happily stood up from his seat, expressing his pleasure in meeting the director, and was about to introduce himself. However, he was interrupted as she promptly labeled him as an ordinary clerk with average working capacity, disregarding the fact that Chen Su often assisted his colleagues in dealing with difficult customers. Lao Wan further added that Chen Su was not adept at handling customers, which was untrue as Chen Su had once cautioned the manager about a risky situation. Chen Su questioned the director, asking if she was certain about his worth. Director Wang interjected angrily, reprimanding Chen Su for daring to question his abilities and instructing him to stop uttering nonsense and act immediately. Lao Wan expressed his concern to director Lu Xian, fearing that Chen Su would only hinder their progress. Miss Lu turned her head away from Chen Su, acknowledging the situation, and wished everyone a pleasant meal. Chen Su's colleague appeared unpleasantly surprised but remained silent. The group began to disperse, bidding farewell to one another. Chen Su confided in his friend, expressing his belief that his hard work would eventually be acknowledged, but it had ended up like this. His colleague placed a hand on his shoulder and advised him to prepare himself, emphasizing the importance of being able to ingratiate oneself with management. Chen Su recollected a time when his friend had rebelled against similar circumstances long ago. His friend had addressed the group, revealing that some teachers coerced students into voting for them daily in order to be recognized as the best teachers. He questioned whether this was the right course of action and urged everyone to resist. He emphasized that they were individuals with the right to choose and that they were present to learn, not to be exploited for personal gain. Chen Su acknowledged that he had changed since his college days, but his friend had already driven away in his car. Director Wang and director Lu Xian emerged from the restaurant as well. Lao Wang inquired why Lu Xian was meeting with employees of lower rank and reminded her that they had to start work the next day. Lu Xian assured him that she understood. Lao Wang continued, expressing concern that some employees might believe they were on the same level as them. He went on to warn Lu Xian that if she failed to comprehend her place and responsibilities, she could find herself unemployed. Chen Su activated the program through his eye, contemplating how hard work went unrewarded and the personal lives of employees seemed inconsequential. He grew weary of it all. The program emitted a beep, indicating its understanding. Chen Su mused that the man, likely referring to his supervisor Lao Wang, would probably consider firing him the following day. However, for now, he desired to retaliate. He requested the program to copy both Lu Xian and director Wang. The hologram informed him that it was an incorrect command and clarified that the copy function could only scan one person according to the priority order established by the system, with Lu Xian being the determined target of the scan. In a state of panic, the man realized that the hologram was already hovering over Lu Xian, informing her that the scan was complete and the character had been created. Chen Su hurriedly entered his apartment and vocalized his question to the program, wondering why it hadn't mentioned earlier that only one person could be scanned. In a monotonous voice, the program responded, detecting a surge of dopamine in his body. Analyzing the situation, the program altered its voice to a female tone and remarked how cool Chen Su was. Feeling embarrassed, he requested to be left alone and explained that he had merely thought it would be nice to have a pleasant NPC. The program replied as it pleased, stating that the dream system would commence at midnight, and Chen Su needed to quickly find a place to sleep. The man gazed at the robot hologram and expressed his frustration, remarking that it was easier said than done. As he lay in bed, The hologram continued to bother him, causing him to be unable to sleep. The program reassured him that they had anticipated this difficulty for their users and that it would intervene with his nervous system to induce physical sleep. Just as the program began to explain the process, Chen Su witnessed a bright flash before him, and he immediately fell into a deep sleep. In a realm within his mind, the man collapsed to the floor and let out a scream. Standing before him was a robot girl with a walking stick. She informed him that she was the AI who had been communicating with him and served as the administrator of the dream system. She suggested that he could call her 63. Rising from the floor, the man inquired if it had already begun. She responded negatively, stating that they needed to restock their supplies before the battle, and the current location was a warehouse for exchange, extending her hand with the cane. A series of numbered iron doors emerged, gradually ascending behind them, each revealing various items. At the first section, there was a knife, described by the girl as a military-grade weapon worth 2 points. They continued walking past other sections, and eventually, the girl mentioned a 100-ton truck worth 40 points, thermal underwear worth 20 points, and individual food rations worth 1 point. Chen Su noticed something and began to speak when he realized that the items seemed endless. He asked if there was an infinite battery and expressed his excitement, deeming it awesome. However, the girl swiftly struck his arm with her cane, cautioning him that it was not for sale and not to touch it. The boy let out a painful scream. The girl explained that she was only showing him the items and that he would earn points by completing levels, which could be used to purchase items there. She emphasized the importance of wisely distributing points to overcome the increasing difficulty of the world in the future. Nursing his injured hand, Chen Su acknowledged that he now understood the game mechanics. He inquired about the NPC system and whether there were any powerful NPCs available for hire. Number 63, the girl, pointed to herself and revealed that she could be at his disposal for 10,000 points. Chen Su questioned why she couldn't accompany him, prompting the girl to gesture towards the light with her walking stick. She informed him that if he had no further questions, the dream would officially commence, wishing him a pleasant game as she walked away. Chen Su found himself standing before a brightly lit passageway with a sign above it bearing the name, Doomsday Survival. He read it in surprise as the intense light began to engulf him. Suddenly, he woke up, quickly sitting up in his bed and surveying his surroundings, realizing that he was still in his own house and that nothing had changed. Clutching his head, he berated himself, acknowledging his foolishness. Even if he had little interest in technology, he should have known that such a thing couldn't possibly exist. Determined to move on, he resolved to wash the dishes and head to work. Getting out of bed, he made his way to the bathroom. However, when Chen Su attempted to switch on the lights, nothing happened. He was taken aback by the realization that the electricity was truly turned off. Having already packed his belongings, Chen Su descended the stairs of the entrance. Stepping outside, he noticed the absence of any other individuals. Surprised, he wondered to himself if there was truly no one around and pondered where everyone had disappeared to. Suddenly, a peculiar noise captured his attention, causing him to gaze skyward. There, he witnessed a plane hurtling downward, crashing into a building with a deafening explosion. The force of the blast propelled him backward, and he sought refuge behind a car, bewildered by the incomprehensible events unfolding before him. He questioned the abnormality of the situation, unable to fathom its reality. Interrupting his thoughts, a monotonous voice resonated, announcing the launch of the virtual dream world known as Doomsday Survival. It posed a rhetorical question, inquiring how he would survive if the human race suddenly vanished. The voice disclosed that the difficulty level of the dreamland was set at 0, with a completion time of 180 days. Filled with shock and fear, Chen Su exclaimed, only to be met with the sound of dripping. Peering beneath the car he took cover behind, he discovered leaking oil. Reacting swiftly, he hurriedly distanced himself, and moments later, the vehicle erupted in flames. Recalling the plane crash and subsequent explosion, Chen Su realized that such scenes might initially appear bizarre. However, upon careful consideration, he recognized that they were merely manifestations of the world's rule, the sudden disappearance of people. He reassured himself that 180 days was a considerable duration, but as long as he had an ample supply of provisions, he believed there wouldn't be any insurmountable challenges. In his notebook, the man jotted down a list of items he needed, which encompassed food, water, an apartment, medicines, tools, and a truck. Contemplating his next steps after being fired, he realized he would have an abundance of time to plan. He debated whether to proceed with immediate planning or postpone it. Chen Su stumbled upon a tape recorder somewhere and decided to activate it. He slung it over his shoulder and made his way to a men's clothing store. Opting for pricey attire, he swiftly adorned himself with the new garments. Observing his reflection in the mirror, he expressed satisfaction and exclaimed, "Great." He proceeded to visit various stores, acquiring different expensive jewelry and a bottle of alcohol. Walking down the street with the tape recorder still on his shoulder, he indulged in strong drinks. Pondering aloud, he questioned the presence of someone named Lu, loudly addressing the game master (GM) and inquiring if they could hear him. Seeking clarification on when Louis Xian would appear and expressing confusion over their yet-to-occur encounter, he abruptly turned in response to a sound, only to realize it was merely a pet dog passing by. Nonchalantly, he remarked that it was just a dog, pointing out the obvious fact that when people disappeared, their pets would be left unattended. However, the mention of Lu prompted doubts of being deceived. Suddenly, a growl reverberated, signaling the relentless approach of a tiger toward Chen Su. Filled with panic, the man pleaded for the tiger to halt and not come any closer. Unfortunately, the tiger pounced. In a state of distress, he criticized the tiger, referring to it as a dumbass, and implored it not to attack, emphasizing that he had just washed his face. Meanwhile, the tiger continued to joyfully lick the man's face. Chen Su believed that this tiger, affectionately named Stooge, was the sole predator in their zoo. The keepers had raised Stooge since he was a cub, rendering him remarkably friendly toward humans. Many tourists visited the zoo specifically to take pictures with him. Stooge's distinctive feature was the lack of fur on his posterior, making him easily recognizable. As the tiger eventually retreated from the man, he pondered the notion that Stooge had escaped when the zoo workers vanished. He couldn't help but question the nature of the company responsible for the zoo and its unsettling circumstances. On the seventh day, he realized he had underestimated the challenges that lay ahead. The water supply had depleted, forcing him to rely on mineral water from the supermarket. Without electricity, all the meat and vegetable products began to spoil, resulting in a proliferation of maggots. Thankfully, there were canned foods and other non-perishable items available. However, the risk of beriberi posed a significant concern. Uncertain of how long the situation would persist, the man considered himself fortunate when he stumbled upon a valuable discovery during his water-stocking expedition. Inside one of the shops, he came across a diesel generator. Recalling his past experiences, he knew that this particular generator could operate for at least 7 days. However, it had a tendency to overheat and would not endure for an extended period. In the same store, he found a refrigerator containing still fresh meat. Strategizing to maximize its longevity, he decided to return in the evening to switch off the electricity, hoping it would extend the meat's preservation. Realizing the potential of the generator and refrigerator, he concluded that this location would serve as his long-term refuge. In the ensuing days, he diligently collected supplies and dedicated his nights to cultivating the soil for growing food. Day 31 marked a significant milestone in his journey. Chen Su sat wearily in the car and voiced his thoughts aloud, questioning what he needed to accomplish that day. The passenger beside him responded, stating that he should find a seed store, as decaying vegetable seeds were repulsive. Chen Su imagined his friend and co-worker from his workplace beside him and engaged in conversation. Chen Shu, his supposed companion, confirmed the need for seeds but suddenly proposed a different plan. He suggested that if Chen Su let go of the steering wheel, causing the car to crash, he would wake up, and everything would return to normal. Encouraging him not to give up, his friend asked if the garlic was meant to be harvested that day, highlighting the prospect of enjoying fresh vegetables and feeling better immediately. In a fit of frustration, Chen Su retorted that it wasn't solely about the vegetables. He complained about the entire town being infested with flies, likening it to living in a swamp. He described the unsettling sensation of maggots emerging from his ears as he slept and the pervasive sound of the wind at night, as if the world had forsaken him. His friend suggested that while Chen Su might be out of the game, reality still remained. He questioned whether he could truly handle the consequences of being fired with such fortitude of mind. Finally, he reminded Chen Su not to forget that, in the end, it was just a game and urged him to regain his clarity. As Chen Su glanced at the empty seat where his companions supposedly sat, he only saw a mannequin, realizing that even in the game, his younger brother Tang had provided him with strength. Suddenly, the headlights of an approaching vehicle blinded him, causing him to abruptly slam on the brakes. The car spun, colliding with the other vehicle that was heading to the meeting. Amidst the chaos, Chen Su caught a glimpse of Louis Xian. The girl's airbags deployed, and as she regained consciousness, she touched her face and discovered a band-aid. Observing her appearance, she also realized she was dressed in men's clothing. Confused about her whereabouts, she got up and left the room, stumbling upon a diesel generator, which surprised her. In another part of the room, Chen Su was in the midst of shaving when he noticed the girl's presence. He inquired if she was awake and promptly informed her that he had prepared everything for her to eat. They both seated themselves at the table, and the girl commenced eating. She mentioned that she remembered him from the corporate dinner and inquired about his name. Chen Su happily revealed his name and privately marveled at the fact that she remembered everything. Had her memories been preserved? Louis Xian questioned whether he had accomplished everything on his own, securing electricity, food, and shelter. He humbly admitted that he had simply been fortunate, citing the presence of a vegetable garden on the street. He then turned the question back to her, asking how she managed to survive. The girl recounted her journey of returning to her hometown in search of her grandmother, only to find that all the people seemed to have vanished. Chen Su became aware that she was the only living person she had encountered, prompting her to inquire about the nature of their predicament. Chen Su voiced his own confusion, acknowledging that he also lacked understanding. Seeking any glimmer of insight, he asked if she had any ideas. However, she confessed that she, too, was in the dark. Chen Su silently concluded that this was likely the extent of what he could learn from her, realizing that the next step was merely an invitation to participate in the game's mechanics. Aloud, he proposed that she should consider staying there for the time being, presenting several arguments. Firstly, they could take care of each other if either of them fell ill. Secondly, he highlighted the more abundant amenities available and the improved living conditions. Finally, he turned to her, seeking her response to his proposition. Lu Xian responded calmly, affirming that it was indeed the most logical decision. Chen Su couldn't help but feel like it was akin to a game. However, the girl interjected, suggesting that they clarify something beforehand. In response to his inquiry, she straightforwardly stated that he wasn't her type and emphasized that there could be no closeness between them. Chen Su was taken aback, wondering why that was the first thing she thought of. He desperately yearned for a partner and, more importantly, someone to talk to. It felt absurd to imagine that the costumed mannequin was his brother Tang. Additionally, he pondered why someone like her always seemed to be despised by others. He recollected the moment outside the restaurant when Lao Wan had mentioned that some people mistakenly placed themselves on the same level as others, and now Lu Xian had directly told him that he wasn't her type. Chen Su reluctantly agreed and acknowledged that they had a deal. He expressed that she wouldn't merely be eating and drinking, and they would share responsibilities. Lu Xian assured him that she could take care of everything in the house. Chen Su rose from the table, confirming their agreement and instructing her to rest for the day, as they would begin tomorrow. He reminded himself not to be angry, reminding himself that it was just a game and disconnected from reality. Moreover, he considered it normal for girls to desire personal space. On day 32, Chen Su awoke to the sound of noise. He wrapped himself in a blanket, wondering what she was doing in the morning. Exiting his room, he discovered a stack of boxes, and Lu Xian stood near her room at the top of the stairs. Chen Su greeted her with a "good morning," and inquired about her activities. She informed him that she had organized things and designated this room as her bedroom. Pointing to the device next to the door, she revealed that it was a walkie-talkie. He could communicate with her using the walkie-talkie without needing to enter her room if he needed something. Chen Su became angry and confronted her, questioning the whereabouts of the mannequin he had placed in the corner. The girl raised her hands and explained that it looked scary at night, so she had discarded it on the street. The guy expressed his frustration, stating that she could have consulted him first. In return, the girl asked why the mannequin was significant. Chen Su, feeling both angry and confused, clarified that it was his friend. He drew a parallel to movies, where things don't feel as lonely when they are personified. He insisted that she should retrieve it. The guy descended the stairs in annoyance, instructing her to forget about it as he would retrieve it himself. He wondered why he had been preoccupied with it all morning. Taking another step, He noticed the gun box and began contemplating the fact that many men, including himself, had a keen interest in firearms. On a previous occasion, he had collected various types of firearms from the police station and stored them in that box. However, he realized that the box was currently missing a fully loaded Taurus 92 pistol. He swore and concluded that it must have been on his mind since the morning. He approached the girl once again, and she noticed his presence. She turned around and inquired if something was wrong and whether he was not planning to cook that night. Chen Su crossed his arms, responding angrily that he had considered it and believed it would be better to wash and cook separately. Lu Xian questioned his reasoning, prompting him to explain that this way, they would reduce their interactions, and she wouldn't have to feel afraid of him, while he wouldn't have to make her uncomfortable. The girl angrily asked what the issue was, urging him to think about the fact that she was a girl and he was a man. Naturally, she asserted that she needed to take precautions because there was no guarantee that he wouldn't do anything. Chen Su, filled with anger, retorted that he understood she was a girl, beautiful, and of higher status than him, so she felt entitled to insult him and act impulsively. He questioned whether he should restrain himself just to make her feel safe and demanded to know on what basis. Lu Xian was about to utter some affectionate words when he interrupted her, asserting that she could be certain he was far from being a gentleman. However, he wouldn't treat her so horribly. He implored her to be less self-centered and more practical. On day 120, Chen Su stepped outside into the bright sunshine. He reflected on the fact that it was his 120th day in this dream, and the place had undergone significant changes compared to 3 months ago. The weather was no longer stifling, and the putrid odor had dissipated. He observed Lu Xian tending to the garden and marveled at the abundance of plants she had cultivated along the street. The place now resembled a true paradise in her hands, with the garden flourishing and yielding plenty of vegetables. During their initial quarrel, they didn't exchange many words. Chen Su wondered to himself if it was possible to endure 3 months without communicating with anyone. To his own mental inquiry, he realized that he couldn't. He got into the car, removed his backpack, and addressed the mannequin as Little Brother Tang. He informed it that Lu Xian had been fighting rats in the garden today and seemed to require no companionship at all. Chen Su vented his frustrations to Little Brother Tang while fastening his seatbelt. He mentioned that they needed to find a source of meat since they had already run out. He recalled that Brother Tang had mentioned there were canned goods left in supermarkets covered in dead flies and questioned whether he should consume them. Chen Su contemplated the possibility of catching rats. Suddenly, an idea struck him, and he eagerly suggested fishing. He turned to the mannequin and asked about fishing. After posing the question, he remarked that even though the fish might feed on maggots, at least they appeared edible from the outside. With his decision made, he declared that they would go fishing later, but first, they needed to visit their old friend. The car arrived at the family zoo, and Chen Su affectionately stroked the tiger, inquiring about its well-being. Interacting with the tiger calmed him down. He lay on top of the tiger, scratching its belly, and complimented it, remarking what a good boy it was. Chen Su silently marveled at the fact that the tiger, affectionately called the stooge, was still alive. He had spotted the tiger at the zoo gate 2 months ago. Currently, the tiger peacefully coexisted with other animals, without any inclination to attack humans. It managed to survive by occasionally feeding on rats and domesticated pets. Chen Su retrieved a piece of meat from his backpack and offered it to the tiger. He patted the tiger's back, and instructed it to save it since it was the last piece of meat from the freezer. Suddenly, the tiger raised its head and sprinted forward, charging into a herd of deer. Chen Su was taken aback by the presence of deer, noting that the zoo deer lacked horns, whereas the ones before him possessed wild, imposing antlers. He wondered if nature had already started encroaching upon human civilization. As the tiger enjoyed its encounter with the deer, the weather abruptly deteriorated. The sky became overcast, and heavy rain began to pour down. The man gazed up at the sky, perplexed by the unusual weather. It wasn't just rain starting to fall, but a sudden, powerful wind swept through, carrying everything in its path. It dawned on Chen Su that it was a typhoon. He hurriedly rushed to his car, flung open the door, and expressed his frustration while informing Little Brother Tan that they would have to endure it. As he settled into his seat, he let out a sigh and acknowledged that facing a typhoon with a severity rating of 10 was seemingly impossible. However, he suddenly realized and questioned himself how he could have forgotten that this was all part of the game, a new challenge. Recalling that Lu Xian rode her bike uphill every day, he made the decision to return home. He observed the scattered tomatoes on the road, reminding him of Lu Xian's battle against the rats and her stern warning to keep away from her precious tomatoes. Chen Su drove uphill, passing by the broken flower pots, reminiscing about how diligently Lu Xian had once planted them. Approaching the house, he noticed that the doors were open, suggesting that she hadn't returned yet. Undeterred by the intensifying typhoon, he continued his ascent. During the journey, Chen Su spotted some light and realized it was Lu Xian. She clung to a pole, using her phone's flashlight. Her leg was injured and bleeding. He swiftly approached her, lifting her into his arms. In a weak voice, the girl asked if she was going to die, to which he firmly replied, no. Inside the house, Chen Su ignited pieces of wood in a designated area using a lighter. He marveled at the existence of a villa on this mountain, finding it hard to believe. He inquired from the girl whether she used to come to this place on a bicycle, but Lu Xian remained silent. Clutching her injured leg and trembling, she displayed visible distress. Chen Su noticed her condition and urged her to let him examine her wound. However, the girl insisted that it wasn't necessary. Rising from his seat, Chen Su expressed that it wasn't the time for emotions and suggested that she may have caught an infection. Through clenched teeth, Lu Xian rejected the notion, asserting that she could handle it on her own. Chen Su contained his concern and assured her that it was all right. He proceeded to share his plan with her, explaining that they didn't know how long the typhoon would last. Given the risk of flooding in their previous low-lying residence, he proposed that they immediately relocate to this mountain villa, which should be at a higher elevation. He suggested gathering supplies from their house and moving everything they could to settle there. Lu Xian agreed to the plan and inquired about her role. Chen Su acknowledged her injured leg and concluded that she wouldn't be able to assist physically. Therefore, he requested that she stay at the villa and wait for him, emphasizing the importance of ventilation and caution against carbon monoxide poisoning. The girl remained silent. He dressed warmly, ventured outside, and pulled up his hood. As rain and snow mixed on his hood, he realized the weather was worsening. Getting into the car, he descended the mountain toward their house. The entire road was flooded, prompting him to deploy a device that detects currents as he drove cautiously through the water. Chen Su noted the absence of electricity and concluded that the generator was non-functional. Exiting the car, he made his way back to the house. He discovered that the refrigerator had also broken down. Determined to salvage what he could, an unexpected rush of water almost swept him into the house. He cursed vehemently, lamenting the loss of all the prematurely washed away vegetables from the garden and realizing that their refrigerator supplies intended for 3 days would now have to sustain them for just one. Chen Su, feeling frustrated, returned to the car and held his head, expressing concern over their meager food supply. He remarked that fishing in such strong winds was already unrealistic, and even the rat holes were flooded, leaving nothing behind. Reflecting on the ups and downs of life, he pondered whether he was right. Chen Su realized there was little he could do if something went wrong after he left. He turned to his companion, addressing him as Little Brother Tan, seeking advice on where else they could find food and how to salvage the situation. Receiving no response, the man fell silent and drove away. He arrived at the family zoo, where a tiger sat near the entrance in the midst of heavy rain. From the car, he shouted, seeking the assistance of his companion. Upon examining the tiger, Chen Su noticed severe wounds covering its body. He stepped out of the car, approached the tiger, and sat down beside it. Speaking gently, he shared his idea that they could hunt together, as the tiger possessed exceptional tracking abilities, and he had a gun. Chen Su also offered to patch up the tiger if it got injured. Embracing the tiger, he urged it to get in the car, explaining that if the road became completely flooded, it wouldn't be able to return. However, the tiger turned away, unwilling to leave its zoo. Angered by the response, Chen Su bluntly reminded the tiger that it wasn't a dog and questioned what it had learned from Hachiko, the loyal dog that tragically waited for its owner even after death. Chen Su added that there was no savior in this world who would come to their aid. He warned the tiger to hurry, emphasizing the potential danger of an infected wound. He mentioned that he had been feeding the tiger for 2 months, implying that there might be some emotional connection between them. However, the tiger only responded with a growl, once again turning away. Chen Su openly acknowledged that it was a game and admitted that he had become too invested. He agreed with his companion, Stooge, stating that it was the tiger's choice, and he wouldn't be able to return until the storm subsided. Casting a final glance at the wounded tiger enduring heavy rain, Chen Su encouraged it to stay strong. Continuing his journey in the car, Chen Su reflected on how this dream-like game felt all too real. He compared Lu Xian and Stooge, noting that they sometimes struggled to control their emotions. Curious, he turned to his companion, little brother Tang, and inquired how he managed to remain calm. However, his conversation abruptly halted as he appeared surprised. Arriving at the villa, he discovered Lu Xian lying on the road with a bucket. Getting out of the car, he questioned her about the situation. The girl seemed confused and explained that she wanted to collect rainwater and didn't want to be a burden. Chen Su felt a hint of anger but expressed genuine gratitude towards her. In response, the girl blushed and appeared surprised as Chen Su lifted her onto his shoulder. She protested, demanding to be let go, reminding him of their agreement that she would be in charge inside while he handled matters outside. Ignoring her pleas, Chen Su playfully slapped her backside, causing her to blush even more and gasp loudly. Chen Su, filled with anger, confronted Lu Xian, questioning whether she thought he didn't have enough to worry about without her. He asserted that from now on, he would be in charge everywhere. The girl protested, insisting that she should also have control over her own room. However, he forcefully threw her onto the bed, causing her to cry out in pain. Chen Su instructed her to wait while he fetched a first aid kit immediately. He warned her that if she dared to act without permission, he would harm her. In a fit of anger, Lu Xian defiantly shouted that she could take care of herself and didn't need his help. She asked if that was what he wanted. In response, Chen Su quickly retorted that they still had enough food for a few more times, emphasizing the need for her to recover quickly so she could assist him and stop causing trouble, or else they would all starve. After some time, Chen Su returned with a first aid kit and began treating the wound on Lu Xian's leg. During the process, she asked him about his plans. He informed her that he had spotted deer, but they had run away. He mentioned that he would go hunting for them tomorrow. Lu Xian inquired about the deer herd in the city, to which Chen Su retrieved a bandage and explained that they must be wild, as people had disappeared, and animals were expanding their territory. Lu Xian shared her understanding that wild animals remember dangerous smells and become highly vigilant, cautioning him not to startle them. Chen Su remained silent, recalling a memory of Stooge attacking a pack of wild deer in his presence. While tending to the girl's leg, he expressed uncertainty but mentioned having a gun. Transitioning to the topic of weapons, Chen Su reached behind his back and retrieved a gun. Handing it to Lu Xian, he informed her that he had found it under her pillow and assured her that he hadn't tampered with the bullets. Lu Xian accepted the gun and questioned Chen Su if he was certain he didn't want to keep it. Chen Su got out of bed, acknowledging the challenging circumstances they were facing, and expressed hope that this gesture would dispel any mutual biases. He advised Lu Xian to go to bed early as he needed to prepare for the hunt. Lu Xian remained silent on the matter. On day 121, the villa was covered in snow. Chen Su glanced out the window, finding it hard to believe that it was snowing. Recalling his memories from the previous night, he speculated that there might be a herd of deer in the mountains, which were at a higher elevation and less prone to flooding. The suburban area they were in had fewer inhabitants and more abundant vegetation compared to the city. However, Lu Xian's words made him doubt the scent factor. Since he didn't know how to set traps, he could only hope that the deer wouldn't remember his smell. He pondered whether he would have the courage to kill a deer, considering that, apart from chickens, he hadn't taken anyone's life since childhood. As a precaution, he also brought along a few fish cages, hoping to catch some fish even without bait. Meanwhile, a pack of wolves observed the car from the mountains. Chen Su ventured into the snowy forest, preparing his rifle for hunting a deer. Suddenly, he heard a rustling sound, swiftly turning in its direction and readying himself to shoot. However, there was no one there. He stared at the empty winter forest, realizing that it had vanished once again. He frequently heard deer nearby but had yet to catch a glimpse of their presence. It seemed as though they knew his every move and were deliberately toying with him. Leaning against a tree to catch his breath, Chen Su contemplated whether Lu Xian was correct in her assumption that the deer remembered his scent, rendering his efforts and energy futile. He wondered if he should attempt to catch some fish in the nearby pond. Chen Su made his way toward the river, observing its strong current and pondering whether it was possible to catch fish in such conditions. The man tossed the cage into the river, recognizing that it was his only cage and he couldn't afford to lose it. Unexpectedly, the cage tugged forcefully, dragging him toward the water. Despite his efforts, Chen Su couldn't hold on and ended up falling into the river. He released the rope, pushed off from the rocks, and emerged gasping for air. Shivering from the cold, he crawled onto the shore, contemplating the unfortunate turn of events. He blew warm breath onto his hands, attempting to provide some relief from the frigid temperature. He acknowledged the need to return home and warm up. However, his attention was abruptly drawn to a deer quietly concealed behind a cluster of snails. In a state of shock, he questioned whether he was genuinely seeing a deer at that moment. The man reached into his backpack for a weapon but realized that he had dropped his submachine gun in the water. Instead, he retrieved his shotgun, hoping to take a shot at the deer from his current distance. Carefully aiming, Chen Su recognized that this was his sole opportunity and fired. However, he hadn't anticipated the powerful recoil, causing the butt of the shotgun to strike him in the face. As a result, he missed his target and the shot hit a tree. Dropping the shotgun, he instinctively grabbed his nose, which was bleeding profusely. Trembling and contemplating the surreal nature of the situation, he wondered why the recoil felt so realistic in this strange game. Determined, he got back on his feet and continued pondering the series of unfortunate events. He lamented the loss of various items and questioned whether he would end up starving to death in this predicament. Suddenly, there was a disturbance, and Chen Su mistook it for an owl. However, upon turning around, he realized it was not an owl at all. He spotted wolves ahead, sniffing the blood he had left behind from the rifle's impact. Standing motionless, he drew out his shotgun and muttered curses under his breath, acknowledging the presence of the wolves. Strangely, the predators turned and walked away, leaving him somewhat perplexed. The man was taken aback by the wolves' decision to turn around. Upon returning to the villa, he headed straight to the room where he had previously started a fire. Sitting beside it was Lu Xian, wrapped in a blanket. She inquired if he had already returned, but he didn't respond and instead began removing his clothes. Startled, the girl blushed and questioned his actions. Chen Su, trembling from the cold and stuttering, assured her not to think anything inappropriate. He explained that he had fallen into the river and wanted to warm himself up with some hot water. With that, he proceeded to remove his pants. Lu Xian, feeling embarrassed, turned away and told him that he didn't need to undress. The stuttering man apologized for inconveniencing her. However, Lu Xian happened to catch a glimpse of a picture in his wallet. It depicted him standing next to a cheerful girl. Lu Xian inquired about the photograph in Chen Su's wallet, wondering if it depicted his girlfriend. Chen Su responded by revealing that the person in the picture was his ex-girlfriend. Lu Xian commented on the girl's attractiveness and asked why they had broken up. Chen Su explained that he desired to start a family, but his ex-girlfriend wasn't ready for such commitment. He then redirected the question to Lu Xian, implying that she must be popular and inquired about her current relationship status. Lu Xian confirmed that she was dating someone named Lawrence, who had obtained his doctorate from MIT and now held a high position as a chief executive in a tech company. Chen Su exclaimed, "What a courageous man. It's a shame he doesn't have better taste in women. Living with someone like you must be pure torture." This remark incensed Lu Xian, who reminded him that she was his boss. As she turned around, she unexpectedly caught sight of Chen Su's naked body, which startled him. Realizing the awkward situation, Lu Xian instinctively covered her eyes with both hands, inadvertently causing her towel to fall and exposing her own body. Chen Su, upon seeing her, had a nosebleed. Lu Xian hastily covered herself and scolded Chen Su for staring. He apologized, understanding his mistake, and declared that he was leaving. Chen Su blushed as images of Lu Xian's body lingered in his mind, finding it truly impressive. However, despite the excitement, he struggled to resist the worsening weather and hunger. On the 122nd and 123rd days of the apocalypse, Chen Su ventured into the forest, but no matter how cautious he was, he could only glimpse a vague shadow of a deer. Whenever he tried to get closer, the deer would quickly disappear into the woods, rendering all his efforts futile. Chen Su acknowledged his lack of hunting skills, having never handled a gun before. He recognized that a shotgun was not suitable for long-range shooting. Unfortunately, when he finally pulled the trigger, a loud bang echoed, and in the next moment, the deer vanished. For Chen Su, his inability to approach the deer was akin to a death sentence. During day 124 to 125, while tending to Lu Xian's injured leg, he contemplated their increasing communication. He noted that she no longer complained about his arrival without provisions. Lu Xian possessed great intelligence and independence, yet due to her nature, she had forced herself to shoulder responsibility. However, lately, her strength seemed to wane, and her wounds showed no signs of healing. It had been far too long since they had enjoyed a proper meal. Chen Su offered Lu Xian a faint smile and mentioned that there might be a chance tomorrow. He explained that he had set up a trap, albeit a simple wolf pit, using lettuce leaves as bait. A wolf pit is a camouflaged pit with stakes placed at the bottom. Chen Su was confident that during this time of year, lettuce would be an enticing meal for the deer, increasing the likelihood of capturing them. Lu Xian expressed her concern, stating that he should have discussed the plan with her beforehand. She believed it was too risky and a waste of energy. Chen Su lowered his head and admitted that he didn't have the strength for another trap like this. He acknowledged that everything would be decided the following day, as it was a matter of life or death. On the designated day, Chen Su drove his car back into the forest and proceeded to check the trap. Initially, he thought it was empty, but upon observing fresh bloodstains, he realized that the beast had recently escaped. Determined, he followed the trail, silently praying that the animal would stumble and fall. As he approached the bushes where the blood led, he cautiously parted them and discovered the wolves devouring the deer's carcass. Frustrated and filled with despair, the man cursed, swiftly drew his gun, and fired shots at the wolves while shouting at them to leave because the prey belonged to him. Reluctantly, the wolves clung onto the torn body of the animal and carried it away. Overwhelmed by the magnitude of the defeat, Chen Su sank to his knees, reflecting on how he had constantly reminded himself that this was just a game and that he needed to suppress his emotions. However, the weight of such failures felt unbearable, shattering all hopes into dust. In a fit of frustration, Chen Su let out a shout that echoed throughout the forest. It was day 126. Inside the room, on the nightstand, there sat a tomato and a lettuce leaf. Lu Xian was lying in bed, while Chen Su occupied a chair beside her. The man declared that it would be their last meal. Lu Xian, however, insisted that he keep it for himself, claiming that she hadn't contributed for a long time and didn't deserve a portion. He countered by reminding her that she was on the brink of death and questioned whether she believed she should simply give up. Initially, Lu Xian remained silent, but eventually revealed that she had spent her entire childhood under strict control. She began to recollect her memories as a young girl, describing how she was often confined to her room, with her father dictating what she could and couldn't do. She often wondered about the outside world and why she couldn't enjoy the same freedom as her brothers. However, even the act of contemplating such thoughts was forbidden. Her father had made it clear that she was different from the rest of the family, and that eventually, she would depart from them, much like her mother who constantly engaged in promiscuous behavior. Lu Xian vividly remembered the moment her father callously tore apart all her childhood drawings in front of her, showering her with torn pieces of paper. He insisted that she had to become a normal person and contribute to the family, emphasizing that she was nothing without them. Lu Xian admitted that being alone had been a valuable teacher for her. Her confidence had always stemmed from the fact that she had no one to rely on in life. She had grown accustomed to solitude. After sharing her story with Chen Su, she offered him a faint smile and asked how he perceived her now, as her narrative differed from his initial assumptions. Chen Su gazed at her intently and expressed how they had all faced difficult times. He confessed that he gave his best every day, yet felt unappreciated. He questioned the point of his efforts and pondered what the future held for him. Curious, Lu Xian inquired if there was something unique about him, something that set him apart from others. After contemplating for a moment, Chen Su modestly mentioned that one foolish thought came to mind: if he was truly certain about something, he couldn't give up so easily. Intrigued, Lu Xian asked if he had ever attempted to stand out, pointing out that in this world, many people strive to shine. She emphasized that if he didn't try to overshadow the light of others, no one would take notice of him, and he wouldn't gain recognition from others. The experience of loneliness had illuminated Lu Xian's inner strength. In turn, Chen Su understood the importance of fighting for one's life. He questioned if he would earn her approval by helping her survive, longing to be recognized by his superiors. He yearned for the board of directors to acknowledge his contributions and say, "You're exceptional, Chen Su. We couldn't have done it without you." Lu Xian responded that if he assisted her in surviving, she wouldn't be alone anymore. She called him her boss and advised him to stop pretending to be cool. In reply, Chen Su took a lettuce leaf from the nightstand and mentioned that it was time for him to leave. However, he suddenly halted and informed her that if he didn't return by the third morning, she could find his body near a small river to the east of the cottage. He cryptically added that she would know what to do afterward. With that, Chen Su departed, leaving Lu Xian alone. She watched him go without uttering a word, her body trembling. Chen Su ascended to the cottage balcony, carrying his dummy. He confided in it, acknowledging that Lu Xian was right, he had never experienced the need to fight for anything before. He questioned his own expectations, wondering if he had believed things would be easier this way. He admitted that he often complained, seeking to escape his lack of preparation and avoiding challenging situations that required decision-making. He confessed that he had attempted extreme measures to distance himself from a noisy environment and evade difficult questions. He could fix many aspects of his life, such as family, school, ex-girlfriends, and his current situation, but he found himself repeatedly trapped in a corner, perpetually complaining about the unfairness of the world. He acknowledged his fear of taking action and his tendency to remain stagnant. After a moment of contemplation, Chen Su chuckled and turned to his dummy, proclaiming that he would never complain again. He repeated this declaration, emphasizing his commitment to change. With that, he pushed the mannequin off the balcony railing, and a vivid fire illuminated the house. Lu Xian grasped a large knife and approached the motionless body of the man. Chen Chu's form was covered in a layer of frost. With a swing of the knife, vivid crimson blood splattered from his wounds. Suddenly, Lu Xian jolted awake, tears streaming down her face as she cried. Taking a deep breath, she struggled to comprehend whether it had all been a dream. It was the first time in 3 months that she had experienced such a vivid dream. She recollected Chen Chu's words, recalling how he had mentioned that she would find his body by the river and know what to do afterward. Lu Xian unfolded her knees, contemplating the reality of her situation. She realized that in order to survive on day 127 in the cold, snowy forest, she would truly have to consume Chen Chu's lifeless body. Meanwhile, in the frigid forest, Chen Chu stood amidst the snow, dropping the shovel to the ground. He took a deep breath, his mind suddenly struck by a plan. Making his way toward the river, he reminisced about the first time he had encountered it. He pondered how it had brought him closest to the deer, an opportunity he hadn't encountered since. Contemplating whether the water would mask his scent, Chen Chu cautiously stepped into the river. Uncertain of the outcome, he admitted to himself that it was a highly risky endeavor. Meanwhile, Lu Xian sat on the bed, unable to find sleep. She muttered repeatedly about her insomnia, feeling restless. Suddenly, she heard a voice remarking on her pitiful state. She turned her head toward the voice and saw her father standing there. He chastised her, stating that she had made a grave mistake and could have lived a life of wealth and fame if only she had listened to him. He claimed that she didn't understand what was truly beneficial for her, using it as evidence that she was incapable of making sound decisions. Angered by his presence, Lu Xian yelled at him to leave, asserting that she could survive without him. In her frustration, she grabbed a tomato but halted, her thoughts drifting back to Chen Chu's desire for recognition from the headmaster. She longed for the board of directors to acknowledge Chen Chu's greatness and say, "Without you, Chen Su, everything would be lost." In a weak voice, she expressed that she had made a promise to wait for 2 days, whether he succeeded or not. She affirmed her commitment to live independently and carry on. The clock displayed 2:56, and Lu Xian still struggled to find sleep. She turned her gaze toward the tomato and noticed a rat scurrying toward it. She wanted to chase it away, but her strength failed her. Feebly, she uttered a soft, "No." Her father's wicked laughter echoed in the air as he reappeared, questioning Lu Xian's choices. He expressed his fear that she lacked the strength to make decisions. He insinuated that Dufang, a wealthy individual, would die soon and she should aspire to be a well-groomed and immaculate woman in order to become Dufang's wife. He pitied her inability to handle things independently, despite her claims of strength and independence. He accused her of being a hypocrite, predicting her slow demise as the rats tore her apart. He inquired if that wasn't what she desired, asserting that it represented independence and freedom. Simultaneously, a rat began feasting on tomatoes, and a deer in the forest began munching on lettuce. Lu Xian acknowledged that she might meet a gruesome death, but before that happened, she vowed to remain calm. Pointing a gun at her father, she declared that it was because she refused to comply with him. She asserted that she didn't need anyone to save her life. Meanwhile, Chen Su lay in the snow, aiming a submachine gun at the deer. In unison, they pulled the trigger, hitting their respective targets. Chen Su successfully killed the deer, crawling out from the snowy hiding spot and exhaling in triumph. He approached the fallen creature, touching it before bursting into harsh laughter, proclaiming his success to the entire forest. Lu Xian was eating a tomato and roasting a rat over the fire when suddenly, Chen Su entered the scene. He carried the lifeless body of the deer on his shoulder, causing his clothes to be drenched in the animal's blood. He called out to Lu Xian, informing her that she had already eaten. Overwhelmed with disbelief, Lu Xian held the tomato in her hands as Chen Su remarked that if he had known, he wouldn't have rushed. He then collapsed onto the floor. Startled, Lu Xian jumped out of bed, calling his name and inquiring about his well-being. She approached him, asking if he could get up. Lu Xian removed the ice cap from his clothes, wondering why he was covered in ice, questioning if he had fallen into the river once again. Meanwhile, Lu Xian proceeded to butcher the deer and hung the meat outside on a rope. She heated water over a fire. As the water boiled, it filled the bathroom where Chen Su lay. Lu Xian called out the man's name and inquired about his well-being, expressing concern. The girl was upset and had already voiced her distress. Suddenly, Chen Su grabbed her hand, surprising Lu Xian and causing her to startle. However, the man didn't address her by name. Curious, the girl leaned closer to listen to his words, and Chen Chu asked if he had received her approval. Lu Xian composed herself, straightened up, and initially became angry. But then, she abruptly calmed down and stated that he was doing well, emphasizing that without him, she would have been in a dire situation. Chen Su let out a light, weak laugh and mentioned the last words his ex-girlfriend uttered before their breakup, insinuating that he had nothing and questioning the purpose of continuing. He paused, reflecting on the difficulty of obtaining someone's approval in the world. Lu Xian agreed with him. Meanwhile, she prepared soup using the deer meat the man had brought, moving him from the bathroom to the bed. Addressing him by name, she informed him that the soup was ready and encouraged him to get up and eat. However, Chen Su remained silent. Lu Xian approached him, checked his breathing, and believed that he was still alive. Taking the bowl of soup, she brought the spoon to his mouth, inwardly resolving to repay her debt and ensure his recovery. She gently cupped his cheeks, planting a kiss on his lips. After a while, she noticed that Chen Su was trembling. Aloud, she questioned if he still felt cold, mentioning that she had covered him with 3 blankets, yet he continued to grow colder. Lu Xian gazed at him with sadness, contemplating for a moment before biting her lip, and settled down beside the man, hoping that the warmth of her body would help him regain his warmth. As she snuggled close to him, she reassured him not to worry and promised that he would be fine. On day 130, Chen Su woke up to find Lu Xian's arm encircling him. He shifted slightly and caught sight of Lu Xian, causing him to blush instantly. Lu Xian opened her eyes and asked if he was awake. She was about to retract her arm when Chen Su unexpectedly held onto it, stating that it wasn't over yet. Blushing and feeling embarrassed, he worried that she might interpret his actions as having ulterior motives. Eventually, he released her hand, but Lu Xian didn't withdraw her touch either. She mentioned that he had once shared details about his previous girlfriend and inquired about the reason for their breakup. Chen Su responded, explaining that she believed they should seize life's opportunities while they were young. Lu Xian commented on this, and Chen Su fell silent before expressing his longing for a family. Lu Xian revealed that she shared the same desire. Chen Su turned his head slightly and questioned why she wanted it and if she didn't seek to prove her independence to the world. Lu Xian challenged the notion that being a strong woman equated to being single. She believed that it was an escape from servitude and that true freedom could be found by following one's own path, unencumbered by societal expectations. Chen Su then asked if she had merely exchanged one form of servitude for another throughout her life. He questioned the authenticity of her strength when she had never truly had the opportunity to make choices for herself. Lu Xian posed the same question to him, acknowledging that his circumstances were different but suggesting that he might not comprehend her experiences due to his lack of autonomy. Lu Xian reached for his hand, called him by name, and asked if he would be willing to embark on the journey of building a family with her. Chen Su, taken aback by the proposition, felt tempted to say yes. The girl, feeling embarrassed, apologized for rushing things and explained that she had suddenly realized her desire to live life on her own terms. Chen Su clasped her hand and requested that she listen to him. He expressed his weariness from wasting time and how it had diverted him from his goal of starting a family. But now, he had reached the final stage, and he couldn't believe it. As they held hands, Lu Xian opened up about her desire to survive alongside Chen Su. He responded affirmatively, emphasizing that family was his main source of motivation. United by their shared goal, they made the decision to create a family together. Chen Su, overcome with emotions, leaned closer to Lu Xian's face, causing both of them to blush. In the midst of the cold, snow is pouring around, it's very cold. Lu Xian felt embarrassed and blushed, but in an instant, she changed her position and suddenly she was on top of Chen Su. Our protagonist was surprised, and he called her my wife. It seemed that Lu Xian didn't like it because she suddenly slapped him. Lu Xian said that they haven't married yet, they were just two consenting adults who lived together based on mutual respect and support. Chen Su was taken aback and couldn't speak, but he seemed to agree with Lu Xian. Lu Xian now took a deep breath and Chen Su couldn't hold back anymore, and his nuclear bomb exploded. Suddenly, a flashback flooded Lu Xian's mind as she found herself in a room, her hands bound and her lips taped shut. Her stepfather remarked that she had blossomed rapidly. He mentioned that it was time to introduce her to the adult world and that today he would teach her the final lesson. Lu Xian's father instructed her employees to enter the room, and the two individuals greeted their boss with a wink. Her stepfather ordered them to engage in activities on the couch. Lu Xian averted her gaze, but her stepfather suddenly grabbed her chin and forced her to look at the scene on the couch, compelling Lu Xian to witness their actions. This is how Lu Xian learned what to do. Her stepfather commented that they looked like a real father and daughter, so he decided to change her name. He gave her the name Sabrina Lu. Returning to reality after that night, Lu Xian woke up, and from that moment forward, they had a newfound respect for each other. She stated that together they would prove their existence. Chen Su lay on the bed, waking up and noticing blood on his hand.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for more content. Feel free to leave a comment down below sharing your thoughts or suggestions. If you want to stay updated on all our latest uploads, click the notification bell icon. And hey, why not check out some of our other videos popping up on the screen right now? If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by liking, sharing, and subscribing. It really means a lot. Peace.